Anthony would be a good politician because he took me out to dinner before we came here, and then I walk in and I see that dinner was free. So, it's the kind of guy you want to elect, I guess. Actually, seriously, I've been with Anthony for a couple of hours, and he's a very impressive guy. And I think he'd be a terrific candidate and someone who certainly deserves the support of everybody. But since he did say I could say whatever I want, I'm going to say whatever I want, and some of you may not like what I have to say, but I just, there's no question that the industry is in peril. It's actually in better shape here, in my opinion, than in America, South, because here at least people care, and I think that the government cares. Whether they care about it as much as you'd like them to care about it is something, but I don't think anyone cares about it in the states. We just happen to have some good lobbyists in some of these states that have convinced the government to do what they did up here, which is to put slot machines at racetracks and to give a percentage of the money to the horsemen. And I think that while that's been a boon to the industry only from a standpoint of purses, but it hasn't done anything else for the industry. And the reason is that the one thing that I noticed that everybody in harness racing seems to have in common is this sense of entitlement that somehow the government owes the harness racing industry support to provide jobs and all this other stuff. And at some point, it just doesn't work that way. It has to be a partnership, and people have to recognize that they're going to have to do their share if they expect the government to continue in supporting it. Because if you're a politician, to be honest with you, and you put it to a vote, who thinks we should give $300 million for purses at racetracks, or who thinks we should give $300 million to education, that vote would be 99.9 to 1 to give it to education. So we've got to create a reason to give money to our industry, because there are a lot of other industries that had jobs. People who made typewriters, and one day there was nobody buying typewriters. And you can't just go around, like up where I am in Tioga and Vernon, so depressed. Factory after factory is closing. And my guess is if the state came along and said, okay, we'll give you X amount of money if you don't close, they wouldn't close. But no one is going to do that because that's not the American way. We just happen to have the advantage that, if you want to put casinos someplace, as we've seen up here, nobody wants casinos in their neighborhood. So we have a big advantage because we've been in these neighborhoods for generations and had gambling for generations, had traffic for generations. So nobody really objects when you put a casino at a racetrack. And the politicians seized on that correctly, and it was a way to get these casinos open quickly, both here and in New York and Pennsylvania and other places. But you can't just sit back and expect that that's going to continue. I mean, to be honest, if I were the people who took the money away, the first question I would ask the industry, I would say, okay, well, tell me what you guys have done in the last 10 or 15 years to help the industry, to create customers, to create new fans. Just tell me what you've done with the money. And the truth is, all we've done with the money is use it for purses. That's all we've done. We haven't spent a penny to the way a normal industry would spend money. Any industry, whether you're selling soap, selling TV programs, selling movies, uses money for marketing and tries to come up with a plan to develop customers and a strategy to develop customers. And if you don't, it's awfully hard to make the argument that the government should continue to support you. You can make the argument that they should support you, but you've got to be able to give back and say, well, this is what we're doing to help ourselves. We want to become self-sufficient. What sealed the deal for me with Christie basically was Christie had decided to pull, in New Jersey, the racetracks were getting $30 million from Atlantic City. And the $30 million was split between the harness racing and the thoroughbreds. And the tracks were run by the state. And the $30 million purely went for purses. And in exchange for that $30 million, the racetrack, the horsemen agreed not to ask for slot machines at the tracks. And that's how both the Meadowlands and Monmouth were functioning. Unfortunately, the state was running both of them into the ground and losing a fortune. I think the Meadowlands, when I got involved, was losing about $10 million a year. So Christie, for political reasons, because his power comes from South Jersey, which is short for Atlantic City, decided that he would take the $30 million and give it back to Atlantic City, and that they would use that $30 million for marketing, and that would help turn the corner for Atlantic City, which obviously, because of all the competition, once the monopoly was gone, they were toast, because casinos were opening in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New York, everywhere. So they were getting crushed. And at the very last minute, a fluke really, I called up Tommy Lucento and I said, gee, I might be able to get us a meeting with Christie, because I'm a Democrat, so I'm not someone who knows Christie. And he said, well, you better call right away, because I think we're at the 11th hour. And I call up the guy. He gave me the guy's name in Christie's office, and he said, gee, I'm glad you called, because if you can get down here with a check for $8 million by the end of the day, we'll keep it open. And I said, you got to be kidding. And I was able to persuade him to meet with me on Friday. So this was Wednesday. And then on Thursday morning, I got a call from the same guy, and he said, oh, Mr. Gural, I just want to make sure you bring in a check with you tomorrow, because if you're not, there's no reason for us to meet. I said, I don't know the first thing about the Meadowlands. Why would I possibly bring a check with me for $8 million? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And he said, well, then we're going to close the place, because this was in middle of December, and the Meadowlands was supposed to open like January 3rd or something. So he said, we're going to announce that it's closed. Not much I could do. I wasn't writing a check for $8 million. And then about an hour later, I got a call from his boss, who was the governor's counsel, saying, I want to apologize. We checked you out, and you really are a legitimate businessman, and you have some money, we think, and you own some racetracks, and we'd be happy to meet with you tomorrow. And I went down there and I met with him, and I said, look, I need 90 days to study this whole issue, and within that 90 days, I'll come up with a proposal, and if I can't, then I can't, and do whatever you want. I can't stop you from closing it, state-owned property. And so they went back and forth with the governor, and they came out with literally a piece of paper, on a yellow piece of paper. The first sentence was no slots at the racetracks, no casino. I said, I get it, there's no casino. And we initialed this yellow piece of handwritten paper, and then I was about to Tommy and everybody was thrilled that we got a reprieve, like a dead man, like an execution was postponed for 90 days. And I said, no, I can't go out to lunch to celebrate, but I'll go to the cafeteria. I have to drive up to Tioga tonight. It's about a 4-hour drive. And then my phone rang about 5 minutes later, and the guy who I made the deal with said, the governor wants to meet you. And he wants to do a press conference immediately to announce that he's saved the Meadowlands, and you and he are going to go. And so I went up and I saw Christie, and I had got to know, I see him on TV all the time and stuff. And I said, well, the trick to Christie is to agree with everything he says. Because if you don't, you see what happened to the guy in Fort Lee. These guys don't screw around in New Jersey. So Christie got up there, and introduced me and said, oh, great, we found someone who's going to keep the Meadowlands open, we're going to privatize it, and we've saved the industry, et cetera, et cetera. And I got up and said, well, happy to be here, and I agree with the governor that, and this was when times were a lot worse than they are today. This was at the height of the recession. I said, I agree with the governor that, we've got to, school teachers and police and firemen are far more important than horse racing. And my goal is to find a way for horse racing to stand on its own 2 feet without any money from anybody. And that's my intention, and that's what I think is the right thing for our industry to do, like other industries. You gotta stand on your own 2 feet. And from that point on, so after the press conference, I went back in his office, and he said, "Gee, you were good. You said all the right things." I said, "Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'll do my best to keep the place open, et cetera, et cetera." And in the end, when things were about to fall apart 6 months later, and I had gotten up and was walking out the door, they came chasing after me, and they said, "The governor wants to see you." And I went into his office. He was very clever. He had his coat on just like me. He said, "Jeff, my coat is on. I'm leaving. My wife is waiting for me. I don't have time for this. Sign the papers." I said, "I can't sign that papers, but I can't believe we're going to blow the deal over this issue." And I never forget, I said, "But I'll tell you what, I'll cap it at $12 million. That was the argument we were arguing over. And he said, "Make it 6 and you have a deal." So we ended up, I think, in 9 or something like that. But the whole point of this is I'm in a great position because no one can say to me, "Tell me what you've done to deserve a casino at the Meadowlands." Because I spent $120 million to build a brand new, beautiful building, state-of-the-art. It's gorgeous. I promoted as much as I can think of. I spent almost all my time thinking of ways to get people in the building. And I don't have any problem saying to the politicians that I deserve a casino. Now, I can tell you that about a week and a half ago, the Senate president publicly came out and said, we're not even going to look at the issue of putting a casino at the Meadowlands for 5 years. And everybody went crazy, Tommy Lucento and everybody. And that was the deal, basically. And at the time that I made that little deal with the governor, he kind of said, "Yeah, you're going to get a casino there." So when I went to see, on Monday, Tommy and I went to see this guy who made this dramatic line in the sand, we're not even going to look at this until 2016. And, he was very gracious. He said, "Jeff, I told you when you went into it that we're going to put a casino there in 5 years, and you did what you said you were going to do, and I intend to honor my commitment." Now, you can trust politicians, Put it this way, I'm not hanging by my thumbs, but it was a good meeting, let's put it that way. And he said to me, he said, "Look, I know the governor promised you. I know I promised you. You did what you promised to do, and, we're not going to screw you." Now, I don't know, but the point is that, in my opinion, I haven't just sat back and just said, "Okay, I need a casino." I've stepped up to the plate. I invested a lot of money. I marketed it. So you gotta forget what the politicians are going to do to you. They're not going to put us out of business. We're going to put ourselves out of business, because if we don't find younger people to replace older people, there's going to be no business. The fact of the matter is, if you look at our customers, if you look at the people who breed horses, people like myself, George Siegel, we're old. We grew up at Yonkers and Roosevelt in the heyday of the sport, the way you guys, some of you may have, I guess when Greenwood was open. But my children aren't interested in this. No interest whatsoever. I have 2 farms. I have no idea what's going to happen to those farms. But they won't be horse farms when I'm not around. My kids have no interest in it. And we have got to find a way to get new people interested. If you look at the mare's bred, just look at the mare's bred. You guys are worried about tracks being open? I think it's gone from 25,000 mares bred 8 or 9 years ago to 13,000. So it doesn't take a genius to figure that there's going to be a horse shortage. They're not going to be able to have all these, it takes a while for that to catch up. But we're kidding ourselves if we don't take responsibility for turning this around. And to be honest with you, you guys have a chance. Because I think, you have a province, all the tracks are in one province. We don't have that. We have New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all different states. None of them work together. My message is clear. It's not the politicians that are going to put us out of business. It's ourselves that are going to put us out of business. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to get younger people interested. I built a beautiful building that should appeal to younger people. And I get younger people, but they don't bet. And I don't know if they're going to want to buy horses either, or become breeders. But they come, at least. But it's frustrating. Like last Saturday, in a brand new building versus a dump, which was what the old building was, they only bet $9,000 more on track live. And it's frustrating, to be honest with you. The food, I have a gourmet food. I'm partners with one of the top restaurant companies in the country. The food is outstanding. My wife, the biggest change so far is my wife will come to the track every night now, which she never did. She likes, she likes the place, and she likes the food. The food's great, the place is gorgeous, and yet it's a struggle. I wish I knew the answer, but I'm thinking all the time of trying things. We're going to have a Roosevelt Raceway reunion, so hopefully that'll, be, and we're going to charge, go back to the old prices, right? $1 for a soda, $1 for a hot dog. I put up $50,000. 25 is my own money to try to reward the drivers that stay there, and really to reward Scott Zeron, who's been a big help, and we came up with this drivers. Jody raced there the other night. So I'm not afraid to write a check, but I don't have the magic answer, but we need an answer because it's not the politicians that are going to save us. And I'm not defending what happened here. That was crazy. You don't just pull the plug on an industry. You work it out, but so I hope everyone realizes that it's not just politicians promising you that they're going to do something. You've got to do it on our own. We've got to show the politicians and we've got to show the public that we're making an effort to become self-sufficient. We're making an effort to get new customers. But you got a good guy here. I hope you appreciate it. I don't know if he's a good driver. Is he any good?